You know what? If you see introducing yourself so that people can know who you are, you need people to introduce you. People need to talk about you, not you talking about others.
Right.
Okay, today's lesson is about compassion for success. And we know that people call themselves Christian, and when they call themselves Christian, that means a follower of Christ. Christ was moved with compassion. We'll get to that verse later on. Now, in business, I think it's John Maxwell said, we do business with people that we know, like, and trust. If somebody treats you with disrespect, do you like them and trust them? No. So that's where I started to realize the impact of compassion even in business. I've changed the format just a little bit here. You'll see we have a lesson aim now. I think I'll go back through my book and do some modifications because before we print it, I would like it to be a manual that people can use as a study guide. And so our lesson aim today is to help us understand the benefits of caring for and helping people feel safe. In Maslow's hierarchy of needs, our first need is to feel safe. When we feel safe, we can begin to thrive. If we are in a traumatic situation and it triggers us emotionally, continually. I think I've drawn the illustration of the house here. The emotional side of your brain is triggered, and when it comes down, it's triggered again, and then when it starts to come down, it's triggered again. The logical side of your brain doesn't develop properly. And so what happens, what? Yeah, I can even draw it out for you.
Where you can see this, Diana?
So when we're born, a baby doesn't think, he only feels. So we start our house, and the door into your mind is through your emotions and your feelings. You come here, and feelings. All right, if you are in a traumatic situation, this is triggered, and your logic and reasoning comes later. So this is the survival part of your brain. They call it the lizard brain. Because when you're walking through an unknown place, like tall grass, and you hear a noise, your emotions want you to survive. Our survival instinct is very strong. So you hear an unknown noise, you think maybe it's a snake, so you jump. The adrenal glands start pumping so that in case you have to run, you can run. If logic and reasoning has been developed, then before you start running, you actually check to see what it was that made the noise. You say, oh, it's just a branch that fell from the tree. It's nothing. The adrenal glands quit pumping, and you return back to normal. But if logic and reasoning is not developed, then we go into a trauma response. That's all we have. And so today's lesson, the reason I'm going through that is today's lesson will capture a lot of this. If you find yourself, when you're triggered, you go into a trauma response, it's possible that the logic and reasoning wasn't developed like it should have been. So then what your house looks like as an adult, see this part of your brain builds continually. My logic and reasoning is still coming up. But if if you've been traumatized the majority of your life, your logic and reasoning is too small. So you're operating out of the emotional side of your brain instead of the logical side of your brain. And then when you're traumatized, you have a trauma response instead of an emotionally mature response. And so if you find yourself in that position, a good doctor there's two of them. One of them, her name is Karen Purvis. Karen, it's spelled this way, Karen Purvis. She has a lot of lessons, and it's TBRI, Trust-Based Relational Intervention. And so with trust-based relational intervention, the first thing that a child in a good home learns is, I have a voice. So you have a need, in the hierarchy of needs, you have a need, you're cold, wet, or hungry, and you cry, and somebody takes care of your need. So that builds a trust chemistry in your brain that later in life, when you have a need, you reach out to people that you trust. You pick up the phone. I call Ann and I say, Ann, I have a lawyer problem here. It's because she's someone who I know, like, and trust. I have a lawyer problem. Can you help me? But otherwise, if I don't have the trust chemistry, I go into fight or flight. I don't have that trust chemistry in my brain. It's just not there. Now, it can be overcome. In her lessons, TBRI is the name of her courses, TBRI. She explains that. Now, the other one that is really good is Dr. Caroline Leaf. And she does extensive studies in people who have been traumatized as children and haven't developed the trust part of their brain properly. They don't have the trust chemistry. So then what happens is we have to do the hard work. And there's a whole series of emotions that we go through. We become angry because we were born into a bad situation. And really it's the 5 stages of grief. Anger can sometimes be grief. So we typically go through anger, we go through bitterness, we become very depressed. Why did my parents not take care of me? And then we go through like an acquiescence. Acquiescence means to accept is inevitable. Well, there's nothing I can do about it, which is a form of depression. And then we get to the stage where we accept it. We say, okay, this is my life. This is what I have to overcome. Because everybody has something to overcome. And most of the time, we don't want to overcome what we have to overcome. We have to accept it. We have to say, this is where I am. And this is how I got here. It's not necessarily my fault. But for me to live a successful life, I'll have to overcome. So does this make sense? More sense now? Yeah. So we continually work on our logic and reasoning. And when you have compassion, it's a sign of high emotional maturity. Because we're selfish by nature. I want to preserve myself first. So there's an old joke that if you go bear hunting, make sure you take a friend. Make sure your friend is slower than you. So if the bear starts chasing you, you can outrun your friend. All right. So number one, if you take care of people, they will take care of you. And there's lots of stories in the Bible. The story of Rahab and the spies, remember? She took care of the spies. Later, when the walls fell down, her room was spared. So there's the story in Joshua of Abigail. Do you remember when David and his men were passing through the land and they asked Nabal if they could have some food and drink, and he was very rude. They said he's a curlish, very rude man. So David's emotions were triggered, and he said, we're going to go destroy this guy. And Abigail, Nabal's wife, was a very compassionate woman, and before they got to the city, she anticipated what would happen because she knew how her husband triggered people. And so she went out with a lot of bread and fruit and food, and she implored David to not kill her husband. And so he said, thank you, you have saved me from doing a great sin. Later, if I remember right, Nabal was killed, and David took Abigail as his wife. So when we treat people well, they treat us well. I was talking with Lamai about this on the way to and from Uganda, and he said, and I don't remember all the details, but he said there was a powerful former political figure in Kenya, and he went to the U.S. with Moi, was that right? But he was very rude to his own workers, to the gardener, to the cook, to the people that took care of the garden. He was just a very curlish person. And so he didn't win their respect at all. And so there was a political enemy who wanted to kill this man. He said, he stands for the wrong thing, I want to kill him. And so he started doing some research because he knew this man always carried a gun with him. He was well armed and had a strong security. But he began to talk to the workers. He sent people to ask the workers, is this guy a good guy to work with? And they said, no, he's terrible. He treats us terribly. And so he knew he had an inroad. And so he found out a way to send the wrong kind of people there, and they stayed outside the compound, and they began to make friends with the workers. And then one day when this man came out of the house where he didn't have his gun, he went out to check the chickens. They let him in the compound with a ladder. They showed him where the chicken house was, and he was brutally murdered. So we see how that when you don't take care of people, they don't take care of you. Now, had he been good to those people and worked with them and given them help when they needed it, they wouldn't have betrayed him like that. But because, maybe in the night he could get up and just scream at somebody, you're making too much noise, don't you know what's wrong with you, you stupid. And so they hunker down. And so all the way through the Bible and through real life, we see instances where what goes around comes around, tit for tat. Number 2, self-awareness. Almost everyone has the capability of exhibiting toxic behavior. Do you recognize it in yourself? Now, what we like to do is be aware of myself when I'm at my best. I'm a very charming, friendly, outgoing, but I don't want to think about when I'm triggered. I don't want self-awareness for that. But if we're going to grow, we have to be honest about how do I act when I'm triggered. And you can't do it normally when you're triggered. You have to think about it a day or two later. Wow, I really reacted poorly. What caused me to do that? And so then you look at the situation, and maybe you don't go back and apologize necessarily, but in your mind, you know that if that happens next time, I want to do better. And so self-awareness is something that a lot of people don't have. They're only aware of how he's treating me. They're not aware of what I did to trigger him, to cause him to treat me that way. And so I suppose because of how God created me, I've spent my whole life watching patterns in people, and they have distinctive patterns. And then when they step out of that pattern, I ask myself, why did they react the way they did? And so sometimes you'll see, they always react that way when somebody does a certain thing or says a certain thing. And so when you can get close to that person, you can ask them about their childhood. What was your relationship with your father? I had no father. Oh, okay. I'm sorry to hear that. And you start to probe a little bit. They learn to like you and trust you. And so they begin to open up, and they say, every time Silas or Lamai, or they do this thing, but it really bothers me. Oh, why does it bother you? Well, because of this and this and this. And you start to realize they're being triggered. And so it is really hard to heal in the environment that wounded you. So we have to find a safe environment. And sometimes that safe environment has to be between our two ears. It has to be that safe space with God, because, most of the time. Because I was in a situation one time where I was being emotionally traumatized, and I didn't know what to do. There was a time when it was so bad I actually got dizzy. I mean, I was just physically dizzy. I was laying down, but I don't think I could have walked. And then God gave me a song, and so then after that, when this person started really getting after me, I would start singing this song in my mind. They didn't hear me, but I'll see if I can sing a little bit.
Yeah.
Under his wings I am safely abiding. I can't even remember the next line. But anyway, there's lots of funny songs. There's lots of good songs, and then there's funny songs. Silas and I were together the other day, and we was listening to John Prine, and he said that over time he developed this system whereby when his wife started accusing him of things that he didn't do, he said, I'm on the other side of town. He said, she's there talking, but for me, I'm on the other side of town. I'm drinking beer and I'm playing dominoes. When she stops accusing me, I come back to home. But otherwise, I'm on the other side of town. So we developed these survival mechanisms to take us out of those. So it has to be, like you say, between here and here. We have to have that safe place with God, somewhere that we can go when we're being traumatized. So it's important that we recognize that almost everyone is triggered by something. And we have compassion for that. We treat them, we don't understand why they triggered. And that brings another memory to mind. Where I stay in Uganda, it's a pretty nice hotel, and there's a conference room, but the man who built it passed away. Now the wife is running it, and she's obviously not a business lady. She was there for the first time the other day, and she never came and greeted us. She never came and said, I hope you're enjoying everything. Are the rooms okay? She never did any of that. Instead, the young guy that she has running the place, who is an orphan, I've talked to him enough to know that he's an orphan. I think he's related to her by whoever adopted him. But he's a very, very shy person. Matter of fact, Lamai and I thought, Lamai actually suggested to me that he was deeply traumatized. He said, I think he's an orphan. So then, as I talked to him, and he started trusting me, eventually I found that out. So instead of coming to the guests and asking us, is everything okay? Are the rooms okay? Are they clean? Are they taking care of you? She went to this boy. He's behind the counter, and I always see he's so diligent. He's either doing his lessons, or he's filling out the bookwork, or he's doing something. And she went over there and started scolding him. And at first, he tried to answer her, but she just talked over him. She wouldn't even listen to him. He started to say something, and she'd say, blah, 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 blah. I couldn't understand it all, but I was there in the room, and she did it right in front of us. And eventually, I watched him, and he just completely shut down. He didn't become angry. He didn't run away. He just shut down. He went into his shell. Then, when she left, he put his head down on the counter like that. And he stayed there for some time. Then he turned the music on loud, and music releases dopamine, and that helps him to feel better. And so he did his thing. So I asked him, I said, where's the other person that's normally here? And he was talking so quiet I couldn't hear, but I think they either ran away or they got fired. And that person, that lady is not going to be successful, because I don't feel like going back there. I don't want to support that kind of a person. So she had no compassion for this young boy. The next day, I asked him, or in the night, I paid him the rent for the room. I said, who will be here tomorrow? Because he normally goes to school. He said, I'll be here. And I said, you're not going to school? He said, no, my boss said I can't go to school. I have to stay here and work. So you see, she had no compassion at all. And so what was interesting to me, though, is after she yelled at him, then she went outside and she was just laughing and chatting with her friends, and she was very, very happy. She offloaded her burden onto him, and typically those people who are rude like that have a lot of fears and insecurities, and they're not self-aware enough to say, I have a problem. So they project that problem onto the other person, and they corner them and corner them and corner them until they've shut down, and then they walk away free. They've left their burden. They've left their fear and insecurity. They've pushed it on the other person. They've made him fearful and insecure. So I already know that her business isn't going to work in the long run, because she's not taking care of people. Not only taking care of people, and people will take care of you, but if you take care of your business will take care of you. Sure. And so we can see that she needs some personal growth. So when the Bible says about self-awareness, it's we can read that verse in Matthew 25:40. Do you have that one, Lemo?
Na mfalme atajibu akawaambia, amin nawaambia, kadiri mlivyomtendea mojawapo wa hao ndugu zangu walio wadogo, mlinitendea mimi.
And the king will reply, truly I tell you, whatever you did unto one of the least of these, my brothers and sisters of mine, you did it unto me. Here's the question: who are the least of these in your life? Think about it. Is it your children are the least of these? Is it your people that work for you? Is it the people you work with? When you treat them, the way you treat them is the way you're treating Jesus. Because the Bible said sometimes we're entertaining angels unawares. We don't know it. And everyone has intrinsic value. That means value from within, because we're created by God. And the problem is that society teaches us that our worth comes from what we do. So that's extrinsic value. So we become what's called human doings instead of human beings. I I'll write that down. I think that's important. I think it's between 75 and 80% of humanity are in the category of human doings. They don't realize that we are all human beings. We're created by God with a purpose, and because God created me, I have worth. And I'm operating out of a place of acceptance I'm coming from a place where I'm accepted by God instead of looking for acceptance. See, these people are human doings because they're looking for acceptance. But when you already feel accepted, you're coming from a place of acceptance. Do you see the difference? I'm already accepted. If you accept me, it's a bonus. If you don't accept me, it's okay. It's not going to stop me from being who I am. It's not going to stop me from filling my purpose.
So the first one,
Human doings.
the human doings, they struggle because they're doing it before they have the picture in their head, and they use struggling. They have the beliefs of this is difficult. Oh, it's very difficult. Oh, that can be done because
Yeah.
the human beings,
but
they make a clear picture in their head, and the human doings that they're looking. They're not looking. They just use their brain. They use their feelings, and they do not struggle.
Right. There's interesting that brings to mind. My consulting coach was telling me about a very, very wealthy man that he was counseling. He had success in every area of life except for his family. He had no success with his family. So he said, well, why don't you take a vacation with your family and spend some time with them? So the man did that. He had a chalet in another part of the world, and so he took his family over there. And so then when he got back, my consulting coach said, well, did you get closer to your family? And he said, what did you do while you were there? Oh, he said, I was designing a hot tub. He said, it's very exquisite. And so he was all excited about, he had designed this hot tub, and he was building this hot tub. And he said, well, what'd your wife and family do? He said, oh, I'm not sure. He totally missed the point because he's a human doing. His worth comes from what he can do. And he doesn't relate to human beings. And so he said, you totally missed the point. He said, you were supposed to go on a vacation with your family to get away from your work and spend time with your family. But all you know is work, because that's where you get your worth. Your worth and value comes from what you do. Is this making sense? Instead of who you are.
Yeah, they identify themselves
Yeah.
in the acceptance part and achievement.
Yeah. And so where this really shows up is when people get old and they can't do anymore. And then they fall into a depression because they say, I have no worth. I can't do anything. And the Bible says somebody else puts clothes on me that I don't want to wear. They take me places I don't want to go. And they feed me food I don't want to eat. I have no control over my own life. And often in that state is where they realize, if they have claimed to be a Christian, I can't do this by working. I have to accept. I have to just accept that Jesus died for me and paid for my sins. And when they accept that, they become a human being because they feel accepted. And so, are you understanding that concept? Yeah. So, if we can get there quicker, and realize it's not me, it's Christ in me. I'm already accepted by Him. I'm already doing His work as I move my vessel under His blessings, as I align myself with God. Then He flows through me. And who is Jesus? He's compassion. He had a heart of compassion. So what happens? Compassion is an emotion. Eunice helped me with this when she was studying. When she found out the lesson, she was listening. She asked me a challenging question. She said, so what's the difference between compassion and mercy? And so I did some more research. And compassion is the emotion that brings about the action of mercy. So I have compassion on Malimu because of XYZ. That's the emotion, the feeling, and so that causes me to reach out to him and help him, and that's the mercy. So that's the nuts and bolts, the equation. So ask yourself, do I have mercy on the least of these? Who's the least of these? It could be the beggar outside the door who irritates you every day. But what happens when we're triggered and we're operating out of the trauma response, we actually are no longer who we are. And so we're triggered normally by a spirit of fear, which is the lower energy zone. And fear is an influencer. In the science of human behavior, people do what they do because of, number one, feelings. Fear is a feeling. I don't know if I wrote that on here or not. There is a statement about, I don't see it. There's a statement about when you operate out of your feelings long enough, you lose your personality. Because you're no longer who you are who you feel. And so when you operate out of fear, which is an influencer, my pastor and I, and the pastor in the U.S. and I talked about this a lot. Drugs and alcohol are an influencer. But when you're under the influence of drugs or alcohol, you can do and say things that you wouldn't do and say when you're not under the influence. Fear is the same way. When you're under the influence of fear and you're traumatized and you're triggered and you're in fight or flight mode, you can do and say things that later you say, no, I never said that. No, you misunderstood me. I couldn't have done that. I would not do that to you, Silas. I love you. You're my friend. But he knows that I became violent in my spirit. But I don't know it necessarily. So it becomes a blind spot to us. And we need a blind spot, and we all have blind spots, by the way, is something that we can't see. The only way you can see something that you can't see is have somebody else point it out to you. So either God himself has to inspire you by your self-awareness, and that develops what's called the observing ego. The observing ego is mature enough at the end of the day to say, I didn't respond well. I was triggered. So what was there that triggered me? Usually it goes back into something in your childhood that triggered us to do the thing or say the thing or react the way that we did. And does somebody have another paper? There's more people coming. So when we are, before we are observing ego is, before we're emotionally mature enough for our observing ego, we have to have feedback. In the science of human behavior, people do what they do because of how they feel. Number two is what they believe. And in the case of this man that we talked about, he believed that I get my worth from what I can do. That was deep in his psyche. Maybe he was taught that by his parents. He doesn't know that's his belief. But you can tell what somebody believes by observing what they do. If you want to know what I believe, just watch my actions. And my actions will tell you what I believe. So, you can start to watch your own actions. But when you're under the influence of fear or insecurities, sometimes you're not honest. I'm not honest about what I've really done or said, because maybe I don't even really know. I was triggered. I said some terrible things to someone. Later on, they say, why did you say those things to me? And you say, I don't remember that. I don't think I said that to you. And so we all have the capability of toxicity. I used to be a fairly toxic person. I did it in such a way that people didn't necessarily know it, but if they crossed my path, they would suffer. And I had to realize that this is not this is a hypocrite. I say I'm following Christ, but I had a strong sense of retribution. And so, as I observed that in myself, I had to take myself in the hand and say, this can't work. And so, growth is a process. We don't just flip the switch on and become a different person overnight. First, there is the recognition of what I'm doing, and then, or the realization, and then there is what am I going to do next time? We have to plan ahead. We have to say, if this person does that to me again, I'm not going to react this way. I'm going to be different. And how am I going to be different? You program your mind ahead of time. You say, God, help me. And you can even do that. You can be having a conversation with somebody, a very, very difficult conversation. Somebody's upset at you, they're scolding you, and you can be praying while you're listening and while you're conversing. You can be saying, God, give me grace to be kind, to be humble, to be compassionate, to realize that this attack is not a reflection on me, it's an indication of what's in their heart. And to realize that they're hurt. This is a hurt person. So, I think you probably have all heard this, but hurting people hurt people. So if you find that people are running away from you, you're continually having relationships that don't last, check inside, am I hurting? Because hurting people hurt people. We only give what we have. And if you have hurt, you give hurt. There's no other way. Now, loving people love people. If you have love inside. Speaking of love, a person with a personality disorder or even a borderline personality disorder will do things to survive. And sometimes they start with charm and end with harm. So they start by love bombing. It's called love bombing. They go around, and when you first meet somebody, they're so friendly. Wow, it's so good to meet you. They look you in the eye. You're such an amazing person. Blah, blah, blah. But then as we begin to work and we begin to have our differences, things go south. And so they, most of the time, I think, I'm coming to this realization, I'm still studying on it, but I think people with personality disorders, which would be narcissism, sociopaths, psychopaths, I think they're created. I think something in life has caused them to become who they are. And so sometimes those people are very, very toxic. And we recognize toxicity in other people, but we don't recognize it in ourselves as quickly. And so, if someone is, I asked Omai the other day, if he meets someone new and they're very, very charming, I said, do you trust that person? And he said, no, not at first, because they haven't built that trust. Trust comes slowly by slowly. You see? So if somebody's super charming and they're very kind to you and full of compliments, be careful. Because it could be their survival mechanism. They're just setting you up to take advantage of you. They want something from you. It's not a win-win relationship. They want to win and they don't care if you lose. So trust is built over time. Compassionate people build trust. We do business with people that we know, like, and trust. And so, compassionate people, in the long run, will become much more successful than people who can't show mercy. Because another thing is, it's part of let me finish number 3 here. I was going to go to the law of sowing and reaping, but number 3 said, personal growth requires us to take personal responsibility for our own actions and reactions. We choose to become a better person or to blame others. You can't do both. If you're still blaming other people, you're not becoming a better person. Because you can change even if the other person never does. I can't change. The only person I can change is me. I can't change you. But as I change, you may change. Because I don't trigger you so much anymore. There's a guy by the name of Leo Roston. He said, I have learned that the weak are cruel, and that gentleness is to be expected only from the strong. And I think there's a lot of truth to that one. Only the strong can show compassion. The weak are still down here in what's called the survival paradigm. They're still operating out of the lizard brain, the emotional side of their brain. And so there's 5 words. It takes courage to care. It takes strength to sympathize. And if you want to grow faster, learn to say these 5 words. I am sorry. I was wrong. It's just that simple. And it doesn't have to be full of drama. We just say, hey, I'm sorry, I was wrong. And that can heal the other person, but it can also project you into a higher level. Because how do you improve unless you admit that I did the wrong thing? As long as you're still justifying yourself, you're not improving. And so when we say I was wrong, now I can do better.
Yeah, but sometimes you need to act really quickly. I'll give you a very short just example. In the school, we have infection. The children was with scabies. So this is something that is that you can separate them. So it's going very fast. And I make up brushes. I explain to the teachers everything, how dangerous is that I can go in their bodies also. So 3 days I'm staying all day to treat the children. They didn't help at all. So one day, I can't treat them all the time. I can't be there all the time. There are 15 people there who absolutely refuse to treat the people with masks, all the medicine, with gloves, with everything. So I got furious. I told them, you don't going to receive anything from me if you don't start treating the children. Because every day we have new cases. So the situation changed.
Yeah.
On a beach, yeah, it's okay. Fine, but the children are okay.
Yeah.
So you have to act fast.
That's right. In some situations
And
you
I
do.
don't gonna excuse.
Donald Trump has been compared to the person who, your house is full of rats, and you hire the exterminator to come and clean out the rats, and he comes in there like a bulldozer, and he said, well, the problem is you've got junk piled everywhere. Move this junk out and put out poison, and we'll take care of these rats. And so he's actually quite rude, but in the long run, the rats are taken care of. So sometimes compassion looks pretty tough, but we take care of the problem. So a compassionate person, just a minute, let's leave the questions for later. I see if I can find, there's a quote that is so good. I'm pretty sure I can find it quickly here, but a compassionate person is not a weak person. A compassionate person, it's right here, is be strong, but don't be rude. Be kind, but don't be weak. Be bold, but don't be a bully. Be humble, but don't be shy. And be confident, but don't be arrogant. And so that is a truly compassionate person. Now, sometime we're going to go through the brain types. And there are brain types that are obviously different than other brain types. So you take Donald Trump, he can go into a country that's full of corruption and cause a lot of enemies, but hopefully reduces the corruption. But he wouldn't be good at selling wheelchairs to people who are so fat they can't walk. He'd tell them to go on a diet. But there are people who have that brain type, and sometimes I'm just going to be open here. Sometimes ladies in the U.S. who have been sexually abused as a child become very, very obese. It's their self-medication. And so it can get to the point later in life where they can't even walk. So they have to be given a wheelchair. Somebody has to fit them, teach them how to use it. That's another level of compassion. But we don't all have the same gift, okay?
But sometimes, you have to see the situation from the ego mind.
Yeah.
Because, kindness doesn't work sometimes. So you need to raise the voice and just force them to do something.
And sometimes that approach of abruptness doesn't work because this person already feels so bad about themselves. They feel so humiliated that they're in this situation, and so it takes a different type of compassion for. Supposing now, Diana, you've been a very independent person. You've traveled all over the world, and now you have this debilitating problem where you can't take care of yourself. You have to be washed, you have to be bathed, you have to be fed. Do you want somebody to come in and be rude to you? Eat this food! You know you have to eat or you're going to die. What's wrong with you? No, you don't want that person. So that's a different kind of compassion. So we need to find our spot where we're supposed to be. And we don't all fill the same spot. I've told this lots of times. Half of being smart is knowing where you're done at. So I'm not the kind of person that would have the patience to take care of somebody like that. But let's see, Helen Steiner Rice. How many of you have heard of Helen Steiner Rice? She was born deaf and blind. She was very violent because she was emotionally traumatized all the time. She had someone who came in and gave their life for this person, taught Helen Steiner Rice how to communicate, and she has some of the most inspirational writings that you will ever read. Helen Steiner Rice went from extremely frustrated to extremely gifted because she had a compassionate caregiver who understood if you can't see and you can't hear and you can't talk, you're very limited. So she lived with her all the time. She gave her life for this person. That was her calling. That's not my calling. I already know that. So, number 4, the law of sowing and reaping, Galatians 6, 7, and 9. Do you have that one ready? It's, be not deceived, God is not mocked. A man reaps what he sows. Whoever sows to please their flesh, from the flesh will reap destruction. But whoever sows to please the Spirit, from the Spirit will reap eternal life. Let us not be weary in well-doing, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we don't give up.
Inasema, msidanganyike, Mungu hadhihaikiwi, kwa kuwa chochote apandacho mtu ndicho atakachovuna. Maana yeye apandaye kwa mwili wake, katika mwili wake atavuna uharibifu, bali yeye apandaye kwa Roho, katika Roho atavuna uzima wa milele. Tena usichoke katika kutenda mema, maana tutavuna kwa wakati wake, tusiposimia Roho.
In Uganda, where we farm, we've planted maize seeds. Are we going to harvest avocados? No, that can't happen. There is a certain type of grass over there that wants to take over, and Lamai has been very, very, very diligent. We've hired a lot of people. They have to go out and hoe it. We spray it. I designed a little machine where we can put spray on even after the maize is up, because if this grass produces seed, it's going to take over. And so the same thing happens with us. As we sow, we reap. When you sow compassion, you will reap compassion. When you sow disrespect, and there's one that's even worse, I call it contempt. Contempt is worse than disrespect. It's like you're not even worthy of my consideration. And so if you sow compassion, you reap compassion. If you sow contempt, you reap contempt. Number 5, the difference between judging and observing, and the danger of playing God. I'll let you read that one. That's Matthew 7, 1 and 2.
Inasema, msihukumu, msije mkahukumiwa na nyinyi. Kwa kuwa hukumu hilo mhukumu huyo ndiye mtakayohukumiwa, na kipimo kile pimacho ndicho mtakachopimiwa.
A lot of people get this verse mixed up. And it says, do not judge or you will be judged. For in the same way you judge others, you will be judged. And with what measure you meet, it will be measured to you. There's a difference between judging and observing. Now suppose I see Silas out beating his servant. I can observe that and say, Silas is beating his servant. If you see a fruit on the table, you know where the fruit came from. You didn't get the orange off of a pineapple plant. It came from a pineapple tree. So if you're angry beating your servant, I know where the fruit is. That doesn't mean that I'm judging you. That just means I'm observing this. Later I can say, when you've cooled down, I can say, Silas, I've noticed that you've been beating your servant. What's bringing this about? And you say, it's something I've struggled with all my life. I don't want to beat these people, but they're not doing the right thing. Well, is there another way we could handle this? And so that we can have this discussion. It's not ignoring what's wrong. We can observe. Matter of fact, it's very important to observe, and we do observe. Because if you didn't observe, you could eat a poisonous fruit and die. If I didn't observe that this behavior was wrong, I might start doing this. Oh, this is how you take care of these people who don't do what you want them to do. And so a lot of people say, no, you can't judge. When you say Silas is beating, that's judging. And if you judge him, then he'll judge you. No, that's not judging. That's observing. Now the judgment comes where I start saying, you're a terrible person because you've done wrong. He may not be a terrible person. It may be that's been passed down, and that goes into the next one, the trickle-down abuse. So trickle-down abuse is generational. Maybe that's the way his father treated the servants. It's the way his grandfather treated the servants. It's the only thing they know. Another trickle down can be maybe this man, Peter, comes home from work and the boss has yelled at him and accused him of something, and he's confused in his mind, and he's saying, was I really in the wrong? And so in that confusion, his frustration trickles down to the wife. He scolds her because the house is dirty. Okay? And she scolds the oldest daughter because her room isn't picked up properly. And the oldest daughter, it trickles down, she scolds the baby girl because she hasn't done her homework. And the baby girl goes into the bedroom and she sees her doll laying on the bed and she says, "Why are you so lazy?" Swap. She pushes the doll off on the floor. But the other trickle down can be the same thing. The boss comes to Peter. He said, "You've done a very good job today. I appreciate you so much. Keep up the good work." He comes home and he tells the wife, "I appreciate you so much. The garden looks wonderful." He overlooks the things that she hasn't done. She goes to the oldest daughter. She says, "I appreciate you so much because you've helped me with the children today. You've helped me with the cooking." The oldest daughter goes to the younger daughter and says, "I love you, baby sister." Baby sister goes to her doll and hugs her. You see? So trickle down can be on a daily basis or it can be on a generational basis. But somewhere in there, somebody needs to have the emotional maturity to stop the toxicity. You say, "Okay, this person abused me, but I don't have to abuse the next one. I'm frustrated, but I don't have to take my frustrations out on my spouse. I don't have to take my frustrations out on my children. I don't have to take my frustrations out on my workers." And so, once again, that requires a higher level of emotional maturity. And it's something to strive for. When we see ourselves abusing someone, we ask ourselves, what motivated that? Maybe I had fear and insecurity. That's the most common of why we abuse others, is we have fear and insecurity. So then, number 7, we respect the gifts and weaknesses in others, because we're no different. I have some gifts, I have some weaknesses. And Lamai and I are doing a little experiment. We've started, and I guess I'll have to give Silas the credit for this. He said, "Always treat the people who serve you well, because they're the ones who hear everything." And so when you treat them well, they know, like, and trust you. And when they hear things, and he was telling me a story about someone who treated the servants so well, the servers, I should say. And one day, the server came and brought him a drink, and they whispered, "But don't drink this one." He didn't even question. They just whispered, "But don't drink this one." So he just left that one. The next day, he found out there was poison in it. Now, if the servant didn't like this person, would they whisper that? No. So we've been doing some experiments with the people that we work with, and or that we come in contact with. And there's a lady named Esther at one of the places, and she really likes Lamai because she can speak Swahili. A lot of Uganda people can't speak Swahili. And now, when we go there to eat, she's singing, she comes over and prays at our table. God bless the food, God bless the Mzungu, God bless this guy, blah, blah, blah. You see? And it's all because of kindness. It's the trickle-down thing, you see? And so we respect the gift that they have, and they respect the gift that we have. And we overlook, what does the Bible say about love covers a multitude of sins? Sins is missing the mark. That doesn't mean iniquities. Iniquities is when you are purposely doing the wrong thing. Sin is just when you're missing the mark. You try to do your best, but you miss the mark. Love overlooks a lot of sins. It covers a lot of sins. It does not cover iniquities. We need to call those out. Number 8, forgive those who trespass against you. Matthew 18, 21 through 35. That's a long reading. This is your weekly lesson here. You can look that one up when you get home. Matthew 18, 21 through 35. There was a man in the Bible who owed a great deal of money. And finally, the man who loaned him the money said, I'm just going to have to sell your wife and your children. I'm going to have to sell everything for you to pay back this money because it's too much. And so he begged and pleaded and said, please don't do this. And he said, you know what? I'm going to forgive you everything. I'm just going to let it go. All right, so then, instead of being grateful, he went to the person who owed him a very small amount of money, and he took him by the throat, and he said, pay me what you owe me. Well, everybody said, whoa, how can this be? He was just forgiven this great debt, and now he's gone to his servant and wants 15 shillings. So they went and told the king, and the king said, okay, he didn't learn his lesson, throw him in prison. And so we see that it's good to forgive those. And the other thing is it elevates us in the energy. When we let go of those trespasses, our hand opens up so that we can receive the blessings of God. Number 9, the importance of showing mercy. James 2:3. And now listen here, if I haven't convinced you already that it's important to be compassionate, this should convince you. You have that one?
Inasema, mahana hukumu haina huruma kwake, yeye asiyeona huruma. Huruma hujitukuza juu ya hukumu.
This one says, for judgment is without mercy to the one who has shown no mercy. Mercy triumphs over judgment. So when we get to the other side, and we don't know what the judgment's going to be like, but if we have been merciful, and mercy comes by feeling compassionate. Compassion is the feeling that motivates the action of mercy. If we have been merciful to our fellow men, this indicates that God will be merciful to us. If we haven't been merciful, God will not be merciful to us. Now, does that convince you the importance of being compassionate? I think so. Now, I've changed the format of my lessons just a little bit. You can see there's a lesson aim, and then the last one is a question, and you answer this one to yourself. What changes can I make to experience more success by using compassion? Because compassion is an indication of the heart of Jesus, and we read that in Mark 6:34. You have that one? Okay.
Inasema, naye aliposhuka mashuani akaona mkutano mkuu, akawahurumia kwa sababu walikuwa kama kondoo wasio na mchungaji, akaanza kuwafundisha mambo mengi.
Okay, so when Jesus saw a great crowd, he had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. So what did he do? He began to teach them many things. The only way to make a better decision is to have better information. And the only way to get better information is to find a better teacher. And so, do we have that heart? How many of you believe that you know about Kenya, but the whole world is this way? There are a lot of people who are like sheep without a shepherd. You believe that? Yes. Yeah. How many of you are now willing to teach them? You're willing. We have that heart of compassion.
I'm willing, but if someone is ready, you can recognize the people who are ready and who are not ready.
But these people are already here because they've shown an interest. Yeah. So no, you can't force somebody to change. That's not possible.
Showing interest sometimes edify a group of people or church or community or ministry. It's not a real interest of the subject.
Yeah. So I think we're at the end. You can shut that off. But